Hey baby, I hear those blues a calling. It's time for the Frazier on Frazier podcast. Hello, it's me, your host, Adam Frazier, and with me in a hotel room is Wes Corwin.
Hello, it's me, Wes Corwin. I decided to stay at a house of luxury. I decided to come join me in this marvelous suite.
Wes is a businessman, so he stays at the Doubletree as often as possible.
Actually, there's an embassy suite. Don't you forget it.
No, it was a reference, Wes.
Oh, I see. It was one of those winks and nods.
Yeah.
I see.
Some people got it. Not a lot of people.
Who is out there getting that, Adam?
Oh, a very small subculture of people.
Great.
Shout out to those guys. Anyway.
Anyway,
We're talking about episode 14, season 2 of Frasier. Fool Me Once, Shame on You. Where we have we've got Frasier. This is one of those episodes where we're kind of challenging Frasier's belief system,
right?
Because Frasier is kind of he believes in the basic goodness of humanity, and this episode is meant to teach him that humans are scum, and it basically just challenged his entire belief system.
Right. It does that. This episode was nominated for an Emmy, Outstanding Guest Actor. Who was that guest actor? Well, maybe listen in, and we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll reveal it slowly as time moves forward.
Yep.
So we start off in Cafe Nervosa, as we often do. Frasier is seated at a table. Niles walks through the entrance. As he goes through the entrance, the little vestibule that they have. There's a woman who walks past him, or no, is going behind him, and Niles holds the door open for her. He says, "Allow me," and then she just keeps walking without really acknowledging anything. And Niles, I guess we learned from this episode, is one of those people, like one of those guys who if he holds a door for a woman, he better get a fucking thank you.
He better get a thank you, or you're gonna have to smell his hands. Which is the next thing he said. So to be fair, I don't know if it's entitlement. I know some dudes are. He's a stickler for manners. It doesn't make it better. And if someone doesn't want to thank you for holding the door open, that's their business. But then he wants Frasier to smell his hands. He had to stop for gas, and he pumped it himself. It's
part of a new kick that I'm on, where I do things and I ask people to smell my hands afterwards, and guess what I just did?
It has gotten me into a lot of trouble. I can tell you.
I'm not allowed back at the dog park anymore.
I'm not allowed back at the Sizzler.
So, Niles is trying to be handy, so he pumped his own gas, which an everyday common thing for an average person, but for Niles, he considers it an achievement of some sort. So, yes, very funny. And as Frasier and Niles are speaking, I think first Frasier mentions that he has a Wednesday night ritual planned with Martin where they're going to watch an Angie Dickinson movie.
Angie Dickinson, who you might know from films like... Oh, go ahead.
No, you please. No, I have no idea who Angie Dickinson is.
Angie Dickinson, she was in movies like Dressed to Kill and Rio Bravo, and she was in the show Policewoman.
I know Police. Oh,
like,
yeah. That was the show that NASA invented.
NASA invented Policewoman?
The TV series. That's another reference for a very
Am I supposed to be getting these?
No. These aren't for you. These are for me.
Oh, good. Wonderful. I don't even know. All right, fine.
So Frasier and Niles, they're talking, and of course, Roz enters the scene, Frasier invites her to sit with them, and she's like, "Nah, I'm gonna sit over here," because she doesn't like Niles still. Niles and her still don't get along.
And she points out some continuity. If you've never seen them interact before, I think it took the entire first season for Niles to remember Roz's name, and ever since then he's been like really, really catty. You know, Adam, I don't know the last time you've seen the Nanny starring Fran Drescher.
I watched.
No,
I haven't seen. I haven't seen the Nanny.
Okay, if you haven't seen the Nanny, there's a female character that's sort of a not necessarily romantic rival. She gets dunked on for wanting to date Mr. Sheffield. Her name is Cece, and there's a butler called Niles who is just every time she opens her mouth, this butler shuts her down. Just absolutely takes her down, and they have a very similarly. I feel like we've watched a lot of Frasier at this point. The first time it happens, when Niles shuts Cece down, you're like, oh, that's fun. That's a funny line. And then by the third episode in a row you're binging when you're watching it, you're like, Jesus Christ, that's a human being you're talking to. Why are you doing this to another person? This person has feelings. They have parents that care about them. Why are you saying these things, you awful person? Right. And Niles, again, it's a thing we joked on a couple episodes ago, is how it feels like the writers are running out of ways to call Roz a harlot, a loose woman.
Right. Niles says he sees Roz walking away from the table. He's like, "Roz, are you trying to avoid me?" And Roz is like, "Well, can you blame me? Last week you told me that they were having a giant horror convention downtown, or a horror contest." And I shouldn't bother entering because they don't allow professionals.
They don't take professionals. They do not take professionals it's amateur.
And then I remembered, you're not a professional. You're just an amateur whore. You're not even good at it.
You can't. He doesn't commit either way. He switches between calling her a professional and calling it. Yeah. No. Yeah. That's a good one. That's good.
So yeah. So Frasier, being the sort of peacemaker he is, he gets them to sit down and have a conversation without making snide remarks at one another while he goes to get coffee. They have a brief conversation where they just kind of make small talk. Niles is like, "Oh, I'm handy now," and the look on Roz's face kind of says, "Oh, is that what they're calling it?
Is that what they're calling it now?"
But she can't say anything mean because they're not supposed to be mean. Niles compliments Roz's jacket. He calls it offbeat, and Roz jumps on this, and she's like, "Oh, what do you mean by offbeat?" And Niles is like, "Well," and then Roz interrupts him, and is like, "Oh, I think I know exactly what it means. You mean offbeat isn't cheap. Well, excuse me for not being rich enough to shop at the International House of Tight Ass like you and Maris the Heiress. That is what you meant, right?" And Niles is like, "Yeah, but I had no idea you'd pick up on it."
Roz like, "Then you were insulting me," and I was like, "Well, you got some good shots in too." And Roz goes, "I did. I'm so glad we did this." And they shake hands. And Frasier credits himself for being a good thing. He's like, "I'm such." He comes in at
the end of the conversation when they're shaking hands and saying that they're glad they did this. He didn't get the context.
He didn't get any of the lead up to understand. It's one of those misunderstandings you see in. I still have a professorship in comedy, even though I live under a bridge.
So I think this is the moment where Frasier realizes the briefcase containing the Angie Dickinson movie that he rented is missing.
It's gone. Where did it? Didn't you put it under your chair? Niles says, and it's like I did. Frasier says I did, but someone must have taken it. At which point they spot a man carrying a briefcase. The script calls him a man. He's a priest. I think it's an important part of the joke is that this man is dressed as a Catholic priest, and Frasier sprints in between him and the door to like confront him, and like puts his hands pretty close to the briefcase, if I'm recalling the physical action correctly. And Frazier's like, "Is that your briefcase?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, it is." And Frazier's like, "Where'd you get it?" And he goes, "Some of the nuns in my parish they bought it for me as a gift." Frazier's like, then that would make you a priest. And he goes, "Yes." "Well then, Father, can you explain why you're carrying around a Bible and some rosary beads?" As he opens the case and reveals that it's not Frazier's briefcase.
Right. So he backpedals a bit. He's like, "Oh, well, I was looking for an Angie Dickinson movie. I gave it to Monsignor, and he was supposed to give it to you to give to me."
Apparently he forgot. It's a 2-day rental anyway. It doesn't matter. Off you go. Which is a very fun delivered line. Is the priest sitting there confused as Frazier repacks his bag and stuffs it to him and excuses himself.
So Niles, being the one who pointed out that the priest had a briefcase similar to the one that Frazier just lost, he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Frazier. It looked just like yours. It had the same inferior leather." Roz then replies, "I gave him that briefcase." And Roz playfully kind of punches her in the shoulder. It's like, "Yeah, I know."
Got you.
Yeah, are those two ever gonna get along?
We have a rapport that is atypical for people. We are mean to each other in a mean sort of way.
We have our next scene. Where Frazier is on hold with, I guess, presumably the credit card company, because his wallet was stolen along with his credit cards and other possessions along with the briefcase. He keeps getting put on hold, and as he's sitting there, Eddie is staring at him from Martin's chair, and Frazier makes the comment, "Eddie, don't stare at me, Eddie. I'm a humane man, but right now I could kick a kitten through an electric fan," which is kind of funny. So Martin rather enters the scene, and he's like, "Oh, I heard your briefcase got stolen," and Frazier's like, "Yeah, well, I feel pretty stupid," and Martin's like, "Oh, well, don't feel stupid. These guys are pros." And Frazier's like, "Oh, well, that's refreshing, because I thought you were going to give me a hard time, Dad."
"I thought you were going to call me a naive dupe," and then Martin says, "a boneheaded rube." And then it's pointed out, Martin says, "You learned a lesson, you got to keep your guard up. If you remember, the world would be a happier place if people remember 2 little words: people stink." And it's an opportunity for Frazier to just, hey, bad things happen to people, you don't have to feel bad about yourself. And Frazier instead decides to lecture Martin and say, like, "That's too cynical. I don't want to go through life thinking the worst in people. I think they're basically good and decent." And then he's got his phone off to his side, and as he's talking, he puts the phone back to his face. I am here, but I'm in the middle of a speech, so you'll have to.
And then he puts them on hold, and then he hangs up.
Yeah, which is funny. When Frazier hangs up on you, it plays classical gas. The song, anyway. The one from The Simpsons, that bit with Lenny. And
yeah.
You know that one?
That was a good reference, Wes. I think people are going to get that.
I don't know who that was for. I don't even know if that one was for me. I'm sorry. I don't know where that was.
So we get like Daphne's one scene in this episode. Well, no, she has another scene later. But she talks about her experience moving to London. She was very mistrusting of people back then, and she would, walk the streets and keep her face, her head low to the ground, or not low to the ground, but like, she would just keep.
She wasn't crawling. She wasn't like, that's not what she was doing. In London, that's an unsanitary way to live. She was facing down.
Right. She wasn't making eye contact with anybody, but then one day she realized, oh, that's no real way to live. So she looks up, and there's an old man there, and he needs help, and he's got a piece of paper, and he hands it to her, and she remembers just what she said to that man. That's not how you spell fellatio.
Right.
Right.
Because the first time she ever looked up in London, there was a man right there, a mute man, who couldn't speak, which is why he carried around a sheet of paper that said fellatio on it, hoping to communicate, "Hey, blow me." And of course, she countered it by pointing out he had misspelled it. Now, one missing component to the joke is we don't know how he misspelled it, unfortunately, which I think would add to the humor. But unfortunately, not there.
What does kind of add to are we eating chips on
No. I'm putting my bags away.
No. I can make audio poison too.
This podcast is brought to you by Simply Check Snack Mix, chocolate and caramel. And inside of this bag, I also have goldfish baked cheddar crackers. You have
a bag of goldfish within a bag of Chex Mix.
I enjoy Russian nesting chips. I like to put a bag of chips inside of a second bag, and then I'll eat around both bags. That's my move.
That's more efficient. I hadn't thought of that. That's very impressive.
That's why I listen.
You're a visionary, Wes.
Every once in a while, I have a good idea, and then I like to 2 weeks later listen to this podcast and go, "That was a good one." I mute the bits where you're talking, Adam. But I will occasionally enjoy my own thoughts.
I do the exact same thing, except with me, except
in reverse. I see. No, that makes sense.
So Frazier and Martin, they don't really know whose point Daphne proved.
No.
They're just kind of baffled.
Just a curious thing she's decided to say.
Right. As Daphne kind of often does. That's kind of become one of her bits, is that she will just kind of go on these stories that don't really seem to have a point to them.
No.
So yeah, that's how the scene ends.
Yep.
So we get to our next scene. We have Frazier doing his show KCL. He's like, "Well, I can't tell you how fun it's been chatting to you all, nasty old Gertrude aside." So we never. So it isn't. It's kind of glossed over. Apparently, there's a nasty old woman named Gertrude who calls it
awful woman named Gertrude.
We all have a Gertrude in our lives.
We all have a Gertrude, and she just isn't. She, and sometimes they call into the show and they're just awful and terrible, and no matter how often you change your phone number, she'll call in, and you just got to call her out at the end of the episode. Is what you do.
Yeah, you got to call her out, and you got to call her a nasty old woman over the radio. So Frazier closes the show with a message to the person who stole the briefcase. He says, and he also stole Frazier's dry cleaning because there was a claim ticket inside the briefcase. So he tells the person who stole it, make the double-breasted navy blue suit is meant to be worn with French cuffs. You may be sick, but there's no reason you can't be stylish. And it's at this point, Roz takes off her headphones because she's done listening to the shit.
She's done listening. She walks up. What a great show! It was a fantastic show. And Frazier's like, "What do you want?" And Roz goes, "So I need." Roz apparently wants Friday off, and Frazier is like, "No, I didn't deliver it right. I was like, remember, I need Friday off." And Frazier's like, "No." And Roz is like, "Remember that you don't remember, or I can't have it off." And Frazier's like, "Take one of each. I'm feeling generous." This is the moment we hear someone call it. You hear the ring, and Frazier picks up and is like, "Hey, is this Dr. Crane?" It is. And you, people who are fans of voice acting or very particular voices, you might be like, "Huh, why does this guy sound familiar?"
He sounds like the type of man who's been on a mouse hunt, Wes.
Right. Sounds like the kind of guy that might have been in a bird cage or two. Additionally,
but this guy is calling in saying that he's found Frazier's briefcase, and he's willing to return it to Frazier. And Frazier is very happy about this. He didn't get his wallet back, but because whoever stole the briefcase also took the wallet, but. He gets some of his stuff back.
Right. he's super excited that he got to call Frasier while his producers were in the room. Mel Brooks's producers.
Well, not Mel Brooks's producers. Well, I don't know.
Whatever that one was.
I'm sorry I ruined your joke, Wes.
Susan Strobin.
So he tells the man on the phone, "Oh, why don't you meet me at Cafe Nervosa on Pike and Third?" And the guy's like, "Great," and they hang up, and Roz is like, "Oh, well, that was pretty great," and he's like, "Oh, you were right. People are basically good and fair," and Roz is like, "Can I?" And Frasier's like, "You still can't have Friday off, Roz."
Mm-hmm. And then that's the end of it. That's the end of that scene. She says why, but I think it fades to black as she's going, and I don't count those jokes. If it starts fading to black, I don't count the joke.
Fade to black.
Fade to black. Niles holds the door open for another woman, and she doesn't look at him again. And what's interesting, again, we've pointed this out before, that if you worked at Cafe Nervosa, your least favorite customers would be Frazier and Niles.
Right.
Because whenever anything happens to them, they just start loudly announcing how they feel in the center of the restaurant, which is already jarring to the viewer, but it's especially awkward because Niles is complaining about this woman as they both stand at the front register, like shoulder to shoulder, and Niles is like, he's facing his brother fine, but he's still yelling. Like, can you believe how awful this woman is? I'm going to say so. I'm going to confront her in this restaurant.
Well, yeah. Frasier kind of pushes Niles to confront her, and then the barista walks up to the counter and it's like, "Okay, who's next?" And the woman who just got there after Niles is like, "I'm next," and Niles is like, "Oh no, you're not." And he proceeds to kind of. It sounds like he's going to tear her down. He's going to take her down a peg. But he says, I suppose people like you glide through life and you're wrapped in a cozy little cocoon of narcissism, never noticing such. But I've got
a lesson. I've got a lesson for you, sister. There's still such a good thing as good manners in this world, and that's why I'm going to buy your coffee. Please try the poppy seed muffins.
And the woman thanks him, which is all Niles really wanted in the first place.
Was to be thanked at the cost of a coffee and some poppy seed muffins.
So they walk away. Niles just leaves his credit card on the table.
Right.
Frasier's like, "Oh, well, you were kind of brutal," and he's like, "All I remember was the sound of blood thundering through my ears." So Frasier and Niles, they sit down. Frasier is telling Niles about how he's glad that most of his stuff is being returned. He lost the suit, he lost his wallet, but everything else is mostly intact. Right. His car keys, his fountain pen, his date book, and Niles is like, "Wait a minute, Frasier, look at me." The man who has your car keys also asked you to come here, knowing that you bring your car. And Frasier's like, "Oh well, I know what you're getting at, Niles, and I'll have you know that my car happens to be moving down the street."
No! Oh no! And then they rush out. Frasier's like, "Oh, stop that well-dressed man," because he's wearing the double-breasted suit from the initial scene.
Right.
That I'm also a doctor in references. I understand, which is why I've been crushing this episode. I've understood all the references we've laid down.
So we get the scene after that. We see Niles and Martin in Frasier's apartment. Martin's on the phone, presumably with the cops. Right. He's trying to he's asking for their help and getting a little extra manpower out there to find Frasier's car because it was stolen. And he's like, "Hey, yeah, remember what we used to call people like that on the force, people who don't keep their guard up and think people are basically good." And he's like, and the guy on the other line's like, "Yeah, we called them fucking morons."
We called them fucking idiots. And it was uncensored on CBS in 1994.
And Martin's like, "Well, that's still my son."
That's my son, Charlie. What are you doing? You think I won't fight you? You think I won't make you come to my apartment and
I'll
fight
come
me?
through the phone.
Yeah. You think just because I have a cane, I'll beat you to death with this thing? Keep my son's name out of your mouth, Charlie. Yeah, I'll talk to you soon. And then he hangs up the phone.
So Niles leaves the room. I think he goes to the kitchen, and at that moment, Frazier walks in, and Frazier basically fills Martin in on what happened. Martin pretending that he doesn't actually know. He's like, "Oh man, Martin's like, "Oh man, did they hotwire your car? Those boys have like fingers like concert pianists." And Frazier's like, no, he had the key. He's like, oh, they made a wax impression, and so they could make a duplicate key. He's like, Frazier's like, no, he was the same person who stole my briefcase, and there was a spare inside. He's like, oh, so he tailed you for a couple days and learned your routine. I don't know why Martin has a Brooklyn accent.
That's exactly. Yep. No, that's Martin for you. And Frazier's like, no, he called the station and agreed to meet. And Martin's like, oh, I see. He called you so he could kill you and assume your identity. So he'd have a plausible way to meld into your life and start marrying your people. Like, he'd marry your wife and he'd get into your apartment and he'd live there and he'd be the host of your radio show.
And he'd give me sponge baths.
And Frazier was like, no, he called me and told me he'd meet at this coffee shop. And he's like, oh, of course, the most insidious plan yet. He wanted to meet you at this coffee shop where he'd already bought the deed, and then he'd demolish the building and kill you inside.
He's like, no.
And then Niles jumps out and says, low-fat lattes and biscotti. And Martin's like, what? And it's like, sorry, I think I was late on this joke. I think I came in. I think we were working at opposite bits, Dad. And then it's just awkward.
A lot like this podcast.
A lot like this podcast.
So Frazier's like, oh, Dad, wipe that father's knows best smirk off your face. I'm not a child. Also, can I borrow your car? I want to go to the movies.
Which is a cute, yeah. It's pretty fun. It's pretty good.
I think this episode's going to be really short.
Oh, are we already? We're still so far away from. Okay, we've got a couple beats until the big ending. We have a scene that's very fun at the end, and we're not there yet. Good Lord.
I'm just thinking about I looked over, it's like, 42 minutes, that's about right. It's like, oh wait, we spent a bunch of time bullshitting before. So
we did spend a while doing yeah.
So what? Oh god, now I've lost my place in the.
Daphne is giving Frazier is giving Daphne a tour of the radio station because Daphne had to give him a ride to the studio to KACL because he doesn't have a car. So Daphne is like, well, I mean, I guess I gotta hang out here, so give me a tour of the place. Roz's like, hey Daphne, what are you doing here? And we explain everything I just said in a weird order. And then Daphne leans into the headset and goes, it's not like I'm listening, doing it like Frazier because that's his like catchphrase, that's his thing.
That's his. Did I do that?
Did I do? Yeah, you know. That's yep.
So Daphne. So they. So there's actually a pretty good bit where Frazier's like, yes, you have a very soothing voice. You have a calming manner. I could listen to you all day. Now get out of my booth.
That is a good bit.
At this point, the phone rings. Roz answers. And it's a woman named Denise who is calling because apparently she was out last night with Frazier. Frazier's like, I wasn't out with any woman named Denise. And Ross is like, oh, I'm going to put this on speakerphone. I'm going to broadcast this. This is juicy. This is
gold. And he calls and is like this. And apparently this woman, whoever she was with, is claiming that they were Frazier. And she woke up after a night of vigorous, semi-bold lovemaking and proceeded to see this BMW pulling out the driveway. And she was disappointed because how can I be after the best first night I've ever spent with a man? and he puts her on hold. And he's like, "Do you know what this means?" And then Roz is like, "The guy who stole your stuff told her he was you." And it worked. She slept with him on the first date. Nobody ever sleeps with me on the first date. Which is just Frasier losing focus. And being like, "Hi, it's me again." I
held the door open for you. I took you to the Olive Garden, and you're not going to sleep with me on the first...
I introduced you to my family at the Olive Garden because when I was there, they were my family. I thought you'd enjoy that. I thought you'd enjoy meeting my Olive Garden family.
So Frasier,
I took out a breadstick as soon as we started eating from the bowl, and then I flopped it on your face and said, "I can think of something about 1/3 this big." You know how you do with the Olive Garden.
Yeah, no, I do that.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not allowed back at the Olive Garden, actually.
Yep.
So Denise is like, look, I'm sorry to cancel on you at short notice, but I won't be able to meet you at Alberto's later for drinks like we discussed. And Frasier's like, oh yes, Alberto's. I was looking forward to it, but I'll talk to you later. And they hang up. So Frasier is really upset. He's flying off the handle. He can't believe his identity's been stolen, and that this man used his name and his reputation to sleep with a beautiful swimsuit model on the very first date. And isn't Frasier's life just the worst?
It's terrible. It's unavoidably terrible.
So Frasier's.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sure you had something funnier than what I was going to say.
I didn't have I wanted to ask, is this the first episode where we technically don't have like a call-in like celebrity? Because we're about to meet the person that called in, but I don't. Does that count as calling in the middle of the episode? He didn't call in during the program.
I mean, yeah, I don't know how you want to. I'm not keeping score, Wes. I'm sorry.
Oh, I thought we were a record keeping podcast. I thought we were taking vigorous notes, but apparently that's just me. Apparently I'm the one trying here. Okay.
No, but you're right. This is it's unusual for and we haven't even gotten to the scene yet, but it is unusual, and I think you were pointing this out when we talked about the episode earlier. It is unusual for you weren't expecting the guest star to show up. You recognized their voice instantly when they were on the phone earlier, but you weren't expecting to actually see them in the episode because that's not how Frasier usually works.
We've had so many episodes where it's Linda Hamilton, or it's Macaulay Culkin. They're calling in for 20 seconds because they were on the CBS slot at the time. So you hear that voice and you're like, oh, I know who that is. I bet it's one of those funny things where they had a guest for 15 seconds, but he's here. He's about to be here. I'm very excited about it. We're about to get there.
So Frasier is going to go down to Alberto's to confront the man who stole his identity. He gets there and he's looking around. He sees a woman at the bar, and he's like, have you seen a man wearing an impeccably tailored Italian suit? And she's like, just you. So Frasier, he introduces himself, and the woman's like, oh, wait a minute, you're Frasier Crane from the radio. I heard your show, you're great. But wait a minute. Didn't you say on the show that someone stole your identity? He's like, yes. And it's like, well, how do I know you're the real Frasier? How do I know you're not the imposter?
She pulls out a gun and she's like, how do I know which one is the real one?
You're looking kind of sus, Frasier.
Frasier, were you in electricity? Where were you? Where were you, Frasier?
So
this round I'm voting Frasier.
So she storms out because she thinks Frasier is the bad Frasier.
You're right. There's Frazier, and then there's Frazier, which is his evil brother with a curly mustache.
There's the Mirror Universe Frasier, where he has a goatee.
Right.
So she leaves, and in walks Nathan Lane.
Nathan Lane, Timon from The Lion King.
Yes.
And other movies.
Other things where he played Timon from The Lion King.
Lion King 1.5, Lion King 2, Simba's Pride,
Timon and Pumbaa, the television series,
House of Mouse.
he got a lot of work out of that one role.
He got a lot of work out of being Timon from Timon and Pumbaa.
So in walks Nathan Lane. He is wearing Frasier's suit. They kind of meet. They kind of meet each other's. They kind of make eye contact, and Frasier's like, "Nice suit," and Nathan Lane's like, "Oh my God, you're him!" And he runs out.
It's you. It was you the whole time. Oh no! And he tries to split.
Right.
And it does not work.
So Nathan Lane. His name's Phil, but we're just gonna call him Nathan Lane.
We've got to call him Nathan Lane. We've got to save time. We can't keep go Nathan Lane. I mean Phil. It's Nathan Lane. He tries to run. Frasier grabs him, and Frasier reveals how he found it. A certain Denise called the station. She had to cancel your rendezvous.
Nathan Lane's like, "Oh man, well I wore my best suit," and he's like, "No, you wore my best suit."
Yes. Very got him.
So Frasier, he gives him kind of an earful. He kind of lectures him about being a criminal, and he makes the world less good, and he puts bars on people's windows, and I hope that burns on your conscience.
Frasier is like, he points it at the double-breasted suit, and he's like, "This is a symbol." He's talking. I can't be the hero that Seattle wants, but I can be the one that it deserves. That's okay. And he goes on for a while about bats. You know how Frasier is.
So Nathan Lane, he's like, "Okay, you're right. I'm a terrible person." And Frasier's like, "Oh, you think you can placate me just by agreeing, and I can let you off the hook?" And he's like, "No, I'm not trying to weasel out of this. I'm guilty. I deserve what I get." He pulls out a phone, and he's like, "Here, call the police. Oh, by the way, this is your new car phone. I upgraded." For the younger people in the audience, a car phone used to be it was a type of phone that you would actually transform into a car.
Right. It was. I don't know if you ever saw the documentary Transformers. For a while, the entire automobile industry. This was a time when we weren't sure of the future of cars. So Henry Ford, who was 120 and dying at the time, was like, "Let's start making cars that can turn into other things." So, like, what one car would turn into a phone. Megatron was a car that turned into a gun, and he caused a crime wave. People would drive up in cars, and they'd be like, "Hey, give me your money," and it'd be like, "You can't rob me. You just have a car," and it would turn into a gun. Go, "Oh my god!"
So he hands Frasier the phone. Frasier, he dials the police for Frasier because the buttons are kind of tricky. So he says, "I'm the only person to blame for my problems, and I always find the easy way out of things, and it's because I'm lazy. And he's calling into, and he hands Frasier the phone for the police." And he's like, "Oh, you're on hold," and Frasier's like, "Oh, story of my week." And And he also says, like, you know, like he's a lazy criminal because he just does like small time stuff where he steals briefcases or car keys or shoplifting. But you know, he can't do the big crime. You know, he can't be that level 100 mafia boss that you see in the mobile advertisements.
In the cell phone game ads. He's the level 1 guy that's running around and like a bunch of gold drops into his lap. That's who he is.
So Frasier's like, well, you know, I don't think that's you're lazy. I think maybe you just wanted to be caught. And Phil's like, well, why Nathan Lane, I'm sorry.
It's Nathan Lane.
I know, I'm sorry. So Frasier's like, well, you've been taking greater and greater risks. That's the behavior of someone who wants to be caught. And Nathan Lane's like, no, I'm just lazy. Look at your pants. You think I got them hemmed? They're just I just stapled these.
Which is very funny. Honestly, this whole scene is one of the best in the show, in my opinion.
It's
probably why it got nominated for an Emmy.
It's fun to watch Nathan Lane do a scene with Kelsey Grammer. I will give. I think that is easily the highlight of this episode, and I want to. Well, and I mean, I love Nathan Lane. He was one of the actors that I like first learned to identify when I was a kid.
Sure.
Along like it was like him and Robin Williams are like the two that I like really like knew just knew them by name. So it's fun to watch him and Kelsey Grammer do a scene together. It's a fun character that he's doing, and we're not done with the scene yet, so we got to keep going. So Frasier keeps kind of pushing him. He's like, you're not lazy, you're just afraid. You are worried. There are plenty of things that you could do out in the real world. You're just afraid that you're going to fail at it. And Nathan Lane's like, well, do you really think I could change? And Frasier's like, I believe anyone can change because I believe in the basic goodness of people. And then he hands Nathan Lane the phone. He's like, here, take responsibility for yourself. Don't take the easy way out. They got the police on the other line. Nathan Lane's like, I'd like to report a crime. And then at that moment, Heather, the woman that Frasier...
The woman from earlier. That woman from earlier we described. The one who left after thinking that Frasier was the imposter Frasier.
Right.
Who was evil Frasier.
Right. So she bursts in with some cops. And she's like, that's the man who's been impersonating Frasier Crane. And Frasier's like, I am Frasier Crane. And they're like, do you have any identification? He's like, well, no, but it's the truth. Tell him, Nathan Lane. Tell him I'm the real Frasier. And Nathan Lane's like, oh my God, officers, I kept him here as long as I could. Thank God you're here. And so he in the end, he does take the easy way out. Right. Frasier is arrested, and Frasier's like, well, why don't any of you recognize me? And I think it's well, so first of all, Frasier, you're on a radio show. It's not a visual medium.
There's no visual for you. No, absolutely not. Right.
But I also think it's funny that like people don't recognize, because Kelsey Grammer has a very distinct voice. He's kind of known for that. So I think it's very funny that in the world of Frasier, no one really can recognize Frasier's voice.
Right.
Despite it being Kelsey Grammer.
Despite it being Kelsey Grammer. And then Frasier is dragged away. And then Nathan Lane looks into the camera and he's like, did I do that?
He's shouting. This is madness. I can't believe this is happening. People of the world, don't trust that man. May the rats eat your eyes.
Now that's a reference. Now that's a spicy reference.
Yeah, it is. So we got our end credits scene. Niles walks into Cafe Nervosa. This is what we've been setting up for the entire episode. Niles walks into Cafe Nervosa. Another woman. He holds up the door open for another woman, and this time the woman actually thanks him and shakes his hand and is clearly pleased with the kind favor that he just did for her. And then Niles walks to his table, sits down, and he checks his watch, and he realizes his watch is gone. So,
no, that woman robbed me. How?
It's a vicious cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Something happens to Frasier, and then the same thing happens to Niles.
Oh. Isn't that how it goes? Did we learn anything today, Adam?
No, I think this is a lot like that story Daphne told, where there's no meaning to it. It's nonsense, and we're now older, and we have less time on this earth, and you've been listening to the Frasier on Frasier podcast.
The Frazier on Frasier podcast, where our motto is, you'll never get this hour back.
Although I don't think it's been the full hour. I'm pretty sure this is going to be one of our shorter episodes, but that's okay. I don't like long episodes of anything. So we will be back next week. We're going to be discussing You Scratch My Book. Yes, ... It's Frasier dates pop psychiatrist Dr. Honey Snow, trying to conceal his low opinion of her work. Niall strings Daphne along with a phony stock payoff to earn hugs and kisses from her. So we've got a B story in this one. We've got yeah, kind of.
It's exciting. I can't wait for it.
Niles buys up all the GameStop stock, and
he's going to short AMC, so he buys up all of the stock. Yep. No, he gets Daphne to buy it, and then he sells it all, so she's left with nothing. That's the plan.
Yeah. So we'll be back next week. This has been your host Adam Frazier. With me is Wes Corwin.
I'm Wes Corwin.
And we'll talk to you guys later, okay? All right, bye. We love you. Bye.
Bye.
The Frazier on Frasier podcast wishes to thank KACL780.net for providing episode transcripts and Ronald O'Connell for providing our theme song, Frasier MIDI.